Framtidens e-handel, Sveriges största podcast inom retail och e-handel. Det här avsnittet är ett samarbete med Ingrid. Vi skickade ner Jacob Lovén till NRF i New York i januari för att intervjua några av branschens främsta experter inom e-handel och retail. Vi vill också tipsa dig som ska till D-Congress att vi kommer att köra en exklusiv NRF After Work på kvällen den 6 mars. Hör av dig till Framtidens e-handel för biljett. Eventet är begränsat. Enjoy!
Tonight, the holiday shopping surge.
Online sales are expected to smash records on this Cyber Monday.
Online spending is expected to peak, especially consumers will spend a record $13.2 billion.
110,000 packages a day. Estimated 37.2 billion of it online.
This is the story about an industry that started out as something very niched and eventually grew to become a cornerstone of the global economy. It even changed the way we live our lives. And still, today, it's moving relentlessly fast.
So what impact does TikTok have on the retail space?
Compared to Temu on any given day, the Amazon site is toned down. It's the same as it was a decade ago.
Brands are recognizing that social is the third shelf.
It's an industry that keeps challenging status quo.
Consumers are showing up to really save. I want to say spend, but it's really about savings right now.
And considering everything happening in the world right now, you probably know what I mean. You can't help to wonder what's in store for global e-com in 2025. Live from New York, this is the Retail All-Star Podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm Jacob. I'll be your host today. Welcome to the Retail All-Star Podcast. And thanks to Ingrid and a bunch of partners that are here today, we can be here at the Public Hotel in New York. Today's topic is to, as you saw in the video, is going to be sort of figuring out a little bit more about 2025. And there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a turnaround in the economy. Amazing. There's a new president in the United States. Might be amazing. And whether it's good or bad, it's something that will have a spillover effect, right, to Europe and the rest of the world. There's also a big push in social and e-commerce. There were some unofficial numbers. Rumor has it that TikTok Shop here in the US surpassed the sales of Shein during Black Friday, which is kind of interesting and very significant, right? And considering what they've been doing in China, they've been able to grab about 20% share of e-commerce. That's a big shift as well. But there is a big push for regulating these companies as well, right? The Sheins, the Temus, EU and the US, they say these companies got to go. But how will that affect a company like Amazon? Interesting. And maybe the final question, or the big question, is how kind of AIGC will also kind of have impact on all these platforms out there. Like, how will the algorithms of all these marketplaces handle all that AI generated content? We don't know. So maybe we'll see during 2025. And I'm super excited for our first guest, and that's exactly why. He's a personal sort of source for a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. I can admit that I've been borrowing quite a lot of your insights over the years, which is always helpful. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jack Stratten. Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
When did you arrive to New York?
Thursday.
Right. But you're here often, I guess.
Yes, yeah. We're out doing tours for brands and clients a fair bit, and sometimes I come out for keynotes and bits and bobs. So yeah, I know the city quite well, although there is no city, I think, store-wise that changes faster than New York. So every couple of months there's, 20 new brands that have taken spaces.
Flagship stores.
Exactly, yeah.
Considering the topic that we have today, when you look at sort of, let's say, your favorite trends that you'll see in 2025, what are those?
So there's a few that really stick out, but what the biggest one for me at the moment is that I'm starting to focus a bit more on cultural shifts and kind of socio-economic shifts, maybe even more than the digital ones. That's not because the digital ones aren't important, but I feel like I've been talking about those for about 10 years. And it's not they're not important, but it just feels now that that's just the ground beneath us, right? That's just there, and that has to happen. All retail is multi-channel, omni-channel, the customer is the channel, however you want to phrase that stuff. I've started to think, and I think what we'll see more in 25 is for me, the big thing that's standing out is more around what those younger people that we've always been talking about as being digitally native or that have different patterns or shop differently. I'm becoming slightly less interested in that, more interested in them as human beings. What is their worldview? Because the big thing I'm noticing is that this is now, if you compare someone in their 20s now to someone in their 20s, 30, 40 years ago, the difference in their worldview is so dramatically different in very simple ways. Like they're looking at the world going, I'm probably never going to buy a house. I don't particularly trust organizations. I don't think there's a business that's going to employ me for 20 years. So I trust my CV more than any employer. I don't trust government. I don't trust brands. I don't trust advertising. These aren't exaggerations. In the West, this is the kind of person you're talking about. And I genuinely think, 30, 40 years ago, someone in their 20s, yeah, maybe they were a little bit, they're young still and they're kind of still, have certain doubts about certain things. But fundamentally, the worldview is different. How does that affect how they buy stuff? And when I look at it that way, all the brands, and we'll see them in New York, all these new brands that pop up and how they look and how they approach retail and what they look like online and offline, when you look at it through that lens, I think it's very, very interesting, because that's why you see a pop-up in New York that makes no effort to sell you anything. Someone has gone, we're opening a store here and we're barely going to try and sell anything. This is pure marketing. And it's because actually they're more focused on a kind of cultural presentation of what the brand is than selling, than doing kind of what we used to do. The whole thing has shifted. And like I say, I think it's not just about the digital shift. I think it's a cultural and a socio-economic shift. So for me in 25, that's a really big thing that will expand and change.
Let's go a little bit deeper on that, right? So what you're saying here is, there's the sort of only marketing concept of being doing a physical store, right? And if I show you this, I'm not sure if you can see on that screen. So for you who are listening, just audio to this, right? So 3 of these are modern art museums and 3 of these are stores. And that's my point, right?
Yep.
It's very hard to understand. But the top ones, I believe, are Gentle Monster.
Yeah.
The glasses brand. And the bottom ones are modern art museums from Shanghai, New York, and I think LA. So very hard to sort of tell the difference. So what's your thought here?
I mean, first point that expresses this beautifully, there's a Gentle Monster store in South Korea, and the person that designed that store also designed an art museum in South Korea. It's the same person, not a store designer. So it's a brilliant point, very well expressed. That's where that's shifting. Now, this doesn't mean that all brands are going to go in this direction, but I don't, I think maybe some people that come on the tour, we might pop into Gentle Monster and you'll see it for yourself. This is a store that consciously just tries to do marketing. It's an advert. It's like an immersive advert. You walk around and all they want you to do is to remember the brand. They just want you to go, God, what was that? And maybe tell someone else or follow them online.
I think Gentle Monster is a very good example. They want to make sure that you pick up your phone and share it on social media.
Absolutely.
And all the robotics that they invest in, that's just bullshit to get there.
Yep.
And I think that's one side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But when people tell me, Andreas and I, we met at the conference in London a few months back, and there was a company saying that we need to compete with TikTok in physical stores. And I think that's a fallacy, or that's a sort of, we're sort of thinking completely wrong about retail. Yeah. I think either you need to be, what Gentle Monster is doing because it's working for them.
Yeah.
They're using physical real estate for marketing and the product is in the background. Or you need to be super focused and really be good at physical retail and actually selling stuff.
Absolutely.
So everything in between is the sort of danger zone.
Yeah, definitely. But also, what gets lost is a lot of people hear the Gentle Monster or see the Gentle Monster example and go, well, that's great, but that's not most of retail, so we can ignore that. Cool, but not relevant. But actually, in mainstream retail, there is a little bit of that happening. I think really smart brands. If you look at what Sephora do around the world, look at what Lyko do. That Lyko store in Stockholm understands the potential of a store to create online content, understands that the way a store looks matters in a world where everyone is taking photos and videoing everything, right? So, yeah, Lyko want to sell a load of stuff in that store, but it's also a marketing exercise. It can kind of be both, right? And Sephora do that all over the world now. Sephora are obsessed with the idea of having lots of products in the store, selling lots of stuff, great service, but also doing marketing. They're trying to do all things. So this maybe is the more important point for everyone here and anyone in retail is that a store, in the future, I think we should be thinking of a store as doing more than just selling, but selling as well. Selling, marketing, service, advertising, whatever. And, I do believe there's examples in the mainstream where this is starting to happen. It isn't just on the periphery like with Gentle Monster.
Right. And I think Lyko is a good example, right? Because so they launched their app about a year ago. Like around 20% of all their sales goes to the app. So you could say that their app is their physical flag, or their flagship online, their digital flagship, right? So they're not treating the online the channels in the same way. They have an app that's basically for the people who don't have access to that flagship store that they have on Drottninggatan. And also, it's kind of fun fact about Lyko. I spoke to Dyson, the brand that does hair dryers. They have to replace the demo every 2 weeks because people are interacting with it so much. They're breaking it in store, which is that's what you want to. If you walk into a more posher store, you would probably be afraid to touch it. But they've managed to succeed around no, it's fine. Come in, break stuff,
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of that, if we want to have a more, let's say we have these two camps. We have one is selling stuff. The other one is kind of treating it as more of a marketing space. And there's a combination. What are the KPIs that you see brands are implementing to kind of measure that?
Yeah, so I think everyone or a lot of people in the room will understand that this is one of the biggest challenges, but also an exciting opportunity, is actually, in a world where, so take the UK, 30% of all sales are online now in the UK. And outside of grocery, you're probably looking at 40%, maybe 50%. Maybe a city like London, you're looking at more than half, right? So online is incredibly mature, probably the second biggest outside of China. In that market, brands really are starting to go, okay, we need new KPIs for the stores beyond just sales per square foot, because so much is happening. Otherwise, we're just going to close all our stores. But they're smart enough to understand the store plays a role in online sales, but they can't measure it. They can't. They try to, but they can't. There's some simple things that are starting to happen. Gentle Monster and oddly Lush do this as well. They start to look at things like how the extent to which digital engagements with the brand increase in a period of time after a store either launches or relaunches. So if there's new activity in a store, is there a digital uplift in the next 3 to 6 months? Kind of basic, but actually when you think about it, it's fairly good. I mean, after all, if you do an advert on the subway or the tube, it's kind of what you're doing. You can't measure it perfectly, but you go, is there an uplift? Are people searching for us? Are they looking for us online? That's kind of where we're at. Now, obviously, there's a lot of excitement maybe around AI to do this in a more advanced way. People will be talking about that, no doubt, at the conference. But I think that version, the kind of Lush Gentle Monster thing of digital interactions increasing in a kind of maybe, 50-mile radius of the store or whatever, something like that is about as advanced as I've heard it. I think otherwise it's the same as it always was. There's sales per square foot, and then they're also looking at classic marketing KPIs, which is stuff like footfall, stuff like, the extent to which they can measure recommendations, referrals, and all that kind of stuff. It's not very advanced, though. Whenever I speak to brands about what they're doing for omni-channel KPIs, they're still not there. Gymshark are one of the most advanced brands for this, a brand new brand. Digital first, opening stores. If anyone would be nailing that, it would be them, because they do so much online. They know that the store feeds online sales. But truth be told, they don't know. They just believe it. They have faith. They go, we know it works, but they don't have solid data behind it because they can't yet know if when someone walks in the store, has a good time, goes and orders that evening online, they just can't link that.
Yeah. But it's interesting because if you talk to Gymshark or there are a few brands that have nailed both channels. Like Lululemon is one of them as well. Like leveraging social media, like creating that sort of advantage, right? Yeah. But once they've exhausted that channel or that possibility, they don't have any staying power. And that's why sort of physical retail becomes important as well. But most brands, when I talk to them, they are still saying that, my physical channel or whatever my main channel, if they're a physical brand or a physical retailer, they're saying that wholesale and my physical stores are where I find my profit. I can't find profitability in my online channels. Yeah. And if you talk to the D2C brands, they're saying the opposite. They're saying like just a mirrored version, but the opposite, which is, we just use the retail store as a kind of a marketing opportunity. Yeah. And then we our profits is in our online channels. My point is, like, I think it's so easy to talk about this. Why is it so freaking hard to implement?
It's a really good question. I think there's the obvious points that, not to be too cynical, but so many of these D2C brands are ultimately a kind of byproduct of venture capital. So from the outset, they have a strange approach to the world that many of us in this room won't. They can create business models that aren't actually reliant on profitability, and then they kind of have to reverse engineer profitability later down the line. So it's partly hard by design, because they're almost never intended to be easy to make money, because it's just build a following, I think that on this, a really, really good example that I think is really worth reading up on, and I say this to everyone at the moment, is Glossier. Glossier is like the poster child for D2C brands, right? They've been around for 10 years. The classic thing, starts as a blog, starts selling makeup to people who love the blog about makeup. Never made any money, and the whole world was really cynical about it afterwards. Oh, they open these crazy fancy stores, but it's just burning money. There's nothing sort of, there's no longevity in this. And then the last 2 years, they've announced they've started making money. They've actually started making genuine money. Two things that have happened with them, and I think this is the model for the future of D2C. One, they've gradually made their stores a bit less just marketing and made them a bit smarter. They figured out a good POS that works for them. They put a bit more stock in the store. They do some personalization. They're really good at gifting, so they hammer it at Christmas. They started doing a bit of old school retail. Why did that happen? Well, they hired a couple of old school retail people who knew how to do it. They matured. And then you've got, the young team who are brilliant with all their social commerce, but also people who know how to do wholesale, know how to do products, know how to do POS. Really, really smart. Also, they decided they would start for the first time not just being D2C, and they became stocked in Sephora. And it's done incredibly well at Sephora, really, really well. But they've been very cautious not to then be stocked everywhere, because then they maintain a bit of exclusivity. It's our stores in flagships around the world, and it's a little bit in Sephora because, that's a good fit, and then nothing else. So my gut feeling is they're a really great example that you can start to expand, but it's just you are going, those D2Cs will have to mature. They will have to do a little bit of retail, and then we'll have to accept that there is a sweet spot between marketing and selling stuff, and that's fine. You're not going to dilute what you do by selling a load of stuff in your store. That's all good.
You should never underestimate proper physical retail people. I've such a respect for those people. It's a science, right? Yeah. And there's so easy, usually see people directly from Stanford go into BCG and telling old brands what to do, right? And there's some cynicism in that I think we're looking more maybe in a more sober perspective on, that is not just about having a story around, oh yeah, this is how you need to turn around and you need to be more digital and so on. It's actually the proper physical store people who can create profitability out of square feet is really, really interesting.
Totally. And honestly, I think that's the magic. That's where it works. Again, Gymshark, it's no coincidence they're doing so well. Gymshark has a team of loads of very young people. Ben Francis, the founder, they're young, they're amazing at content, they're amazing at gym, community, whatever. But they understood early on, we're not necessarily amazing at retail. Now they're expanding. They brought in Hanna Mercer, who's ex-Adidas, kind of legend of growing brands. She's used to opening 100 stores a year. They've brought her in. Now they're expanding. And guess what? It's doing really well, because they've got the people like Ben, the founder, who get the community, and they have Hanna, who gets how to scale a brand, how to hire people, how to look after them and train them and all that stuff. And the result is it really works. So you're absolutely right. And that probably, I'm able to say slightly controversial things like this, but honestly, I think that's where a lot of D2Cs get it wrong. I think they believe in their own hype too much, and they don't have enough humility to go, do you know what, we might need someone from a bigger brand, maybe a boring brand, who's done this for 20, 30 years, and that's cool, and we can still be sexy despite having the guy from Costco or whatever.
That guy. We all know that guy.
You know that guy.
Yeah. Final kind of topic, final question. I spoke earlier, like in the intro, about these regulations against the big global e-com players like the Shein and Temu, right? Do you think there's room for ultra fast fashion or that kind of extremely cheap merchandise or like products shipped from China? Like, do they have staying power in the West, or are they going to be regulated out?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. I think they have. If they don't get regulated out, they're not going anywhere. Simple as that. They're already too big, and there's too many. There's too much money out there, ready to attach to them because they already have such a following. Right? There's plenty of people out there who will just back them because of the following they have. Regulation is the only possibility. This is particularly hot at the moment because as we speak, TikTok is potentially going to be banned in the US. Shein might get its IPO in the UK because that's how far the UK has fallen. We're basically just like, honestly, we'll take anyone's money at this point.
Like,
come
London
honestly.
Stock Exchange, not that hot.
We're still open. Everything's great. Yeah. What is it about those working? Don't worry about it. We're fine. That's all good.
But I would say that there's a before and after Shein, even if they get regulated out. Like, so if you think about it, like Inditex and H&M, they've been so good at maybe not controlling the conversation around fast fashion, but they managed to keep the conversation around that we're taking responsibility. We are, we're self-regulating, and that is true to at least H&M, maybe not Inditex as much.
Yep.
But here comes this noisy, weird cousin from China who's just all the pots and pans are out and they're just super noisy, really showing us how dirty this industry is, like the fast fashion or the ultra fast fashion. Stuff smells like chemicals, it's plastic everywhere. I think even if you regulate them out, they've managed to forever change the perspective from regulators, from regular people as well, on what this industry actually is.
Absolutely.
So that's an interesting kind of their legacy, maybe.
No, it is. And the other legacy, which I talk about a lot, and I think everyone's well aware of now, the legacy is maybe a positive one, that I think it's made a lot of other traditional fast fashion brands and traditional mass market businesses, H&M, Banana Republic in the US, Gap, they're all starting to go, do you know what? We need to premiumize. We need to get ourselves well away from this other bit of the market that we can't compete with and we don't want to compete with. Get away from the race to the bottom, premiumize stores, premiumize the products. I mean, you see it here in the, I think particularly a good example is Banana Republic here. I mean, they've doubled their prices in the last year or two, right? And that is amazing. And it's genuinely because they've said, well, cheap products don't work. So their stance is, as Shein have come up, they're saying, that's no good, and we're going to do something totally different. They're really committing to that strategy, and they're doing quite well. They've become properly premium. The only way is up for the rest of the fast fashion market, in my opinion. Not just in a kind of vague planet way, but actually in a business model way. You're never going to beat Shein and Temu. You aren't. That's not a fight you're going to win.
100%. I think they're going to sort of settle around, okay, it's better to be top 10 than top 3.
Absolutely.
Because the top 3, they're impossible to compete with.
Yeah.
It's the Shopsiders and the Sheins of the world.
Totally.
I could speak for hours to you. We're very, very thankful that you joined here today. How do we reach you?
How do you meet me? Oh, yeah. Well, just walk around New York. You'll find me.
All the flagship stores, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or one of the Irish bars.
Yeah.
Follow me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the kind of center of my world. So, yeah. And I think I'll see a lot of you on the store walk. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
Thank you very much. Big hand for Jack.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Okay, so I think we managed to have a really sort of an interesting conversation. I think that also carries on to our next conversation. So this new person that I'm going to bring up on stage is she's fairly new at her job, but she's very well known in the industry. She's a little bit of a veteran, I would even say. And the company she represents is a really interesting and a fascinating one. So in a time where a lot of companies are rethinking their physical store strategy, they're maybe relocating, they're even, they're canceling some of their stores, this company is actually expanding on the physical presence. And they're doing that without this sort of heavy-handed venture capital approach. They're doing it by their own profitability and their own sort of accord, which is super, super interesting. They are now entering a super interesting phase in their journey, which is international expansion. So with that said, big hand for Hanna, Moisander, Lager 157.
But we had most fun on our side of the court. That's something. Yeah.
Amazing. So with Jack, we spoke about the sort of, on one side you have the venture capital backed expansion and so on, but Lager 157 is so interesting because there are no external shareholders, right?
No.
There's only Stefan at the top. He's been doing this for 20 years.
25.
So, okay, wow. And now you've been growing really, really fast.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that from last year to this year?
Yeah, it's actually really fun. During 2024, we grew from 2.4 to over 3.5 billion. So it's like 1 billion extra on the line here. So we have rapidly grown, but it's 24 years before that. So it's a lot of stamina and it's kind of fun. Stefan is like a long distance runner or skier and so on. So he's doing it in the stamina way and really built this profit from the beginning.
He's like that A personality person that you like strive to be. Like goes up at 5 o'clock in the morning, does like the Vasa thing, and then like succeeds first try.
It's really true. He called me yesterday from his pocket out running. So he's really true to that brand. He didn't know it, but I had like the most message of it. So I have the proof.
When we spoke before, you said something about Lager 157 expanding internationally, and you said something about the ambition to be the IKEA of fashion.
Yeah.
If we go a little bit deeper, like what does that actually mean? Because sometimes people say that H&M is the IKEA of fashion, but I don't think they are for a bunch of reasons. So yeah, what's your take?
I think we're up for having someone new being the IKEA of fashion in that way. And for us, that means two things. One thing is we don't do fast fashion. We do slow fashion. We do great basic for all people. We do product that they actually need in every day. That's one thing. And in IKEA, they're talking about for the many people, like great life for the many people. We want to do the same thing. And I think that's one thing, but also the ambition of actually doing it our way. Staying weird, staying the same thing, doing like reverse engineering from the start, not starting off afterwards with that is super important. And when IKEA actually started, they did it their own way. Going from actually having people that you had to like order when you travel around to actually being big store and doing that way. That's something we want to learn from and get our own way. Yeah.
And you're still doing the sort of the affordable fashion. So it's very sort of
low price,
within reach of a lot of people and so on. I think that's where the IKEA comparison. But also when it comes to assortment.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, like the extreme example is obviously Shein with 10,000 styles new every week, very small batches, they scale whatever works. It's, that model is very hard to replicate and hard to keep up with. And there you are on the other side of that spectrum saying that, hey, we're going to have these hero products, these winning products that we already know are proven, and we're not going to make them too much of a fashion statement because then they become very short term. Is that sort of...
Yeah, exactly. So when they're going for more products and launch products even more often, we stay tight. We have 600 articles. We don't want more. We have 10,000 SKUs. We don't want more. So that's one of the things, because then we can make sure that we sell every item that we make which is actually a sustainability statement. We don't throw away anything. Of course, if it's broken, that's not a thing, but we want to sell everything that we make. And then we have to make sure that it's products that can last a long time. And the main part of our assortment is carryovers and should be products that can last for a long while. And with that said, also being worn for a long while. Trying to find the best way to actually measure how many times do you use a product.
And it's also the best way of finding profitability as a company, right?
Yeah,
because you don't have to have train new staff to do one new style every 5 minutes,
exactly.
which is really helpful.
Yeah, you can use the same fabrics, you can use the same styles, you can just switch them a little bit, but that's, of course.
When we spoke, you're the chairman of the board, and you were going into doing some in-store training.
I had an internship, yeah.
Internship, yeah, that's a good word. What was the most memorable from being the intern on the floor of a store?
Yeah, I would say one of the best memories from doing that was actually meeting one customer that just went in to say hi. Just wanted to talk to someone, a lonely customer. And that's something that was really memorable for me, to meet for real, which is actually one of our cultural value ground in the company, but really talk to the customers, try to make who is actually going to wear this? Are you going to on a plane? I think this is more comfortable. Really talking to the customers. And of course, being there, seeing that they actually have a board where they were looking at how many jeans did we sell yesterday, how many socks did we sell, what can we do today to actually sell more? Yeah. And being part of actually selling and trying to beat the denim score from the yesterday, it was nice.
That's so interesting. When I spoke to Stefan about something similar, the founder, and so we were talking about the role of the store. We're doing some research. We asked Stefan if he could do an interview, and he said, sure. And my American colleague, he's a Stanford guy with a Stanford English, talking about how do you make sure the KPIs of the store, all that very business Stanford English. We're using that. You could see Stefan no, it's not that difficult. It's about making sure our staff is trained to look the customer in the eye, say welcome, say, can I help you with anything? Then say thank you, and then thank you, come again. These basic things cannot fail, but if you enter a lot of stores, unfortunately, the staff are not, if they're not trained, or if it's sort of the bad environment they're working in, they don't have time, a bunch of reasons. They're just not doing that. And that's the service concept, right?
Yeah, and that's the hard part, to be honest, to actually keep the same standard in all stores. We want to be the best place to work and want to be the first employer of people, which is actually something super important. Someone has to give a person the first job. Everybody can't be at the enter level that you can be invited to New York. You have to start off in a store to actually be able to climb the ladder as well. And doing that, it's super important to actually invest in the training of people and build a culture and the passion in the store as well. Because if you have the culture and the passion, you don't have to say that you should say hi. They will do it themselves.
Let's talk physical and online. You share that, or I think it was Stefan that shared that you don't do any sort of paid marketing on social media whatsoever. Very rare, I would say, because that's the growth model for a lot of companies. Instead, you're letting the physical stores drive your e-com. Is that right?
Yeah, so they really work together. We try to be contrarian when it comes to marketing. We do a lot of email marketing. We talk a lot with our customers. And it's actually not hyper-personalized. It's not like that you get exactly what you need, but we try to push general things. So things that we think a lot of people want and do it often. So we talk to our customers really often. We use social media, of course, but we don't push for anything. And I think that talking about these fancy stores and so on, what they are creating is word of mouth and something worth talking about. If you push too much marketing, it's hard to have something you don't have the secret, because everybody sees it. But what we have is a secret of great prices. Oh, I actually bought this from Lager 157. It's a new brand of theirs. And you have something you get to talk about because you don't see it as ads all the time.
And I think that in a way it's a very simplistic approach that you have. But in a way it's also, you mentioned also that you're constantly sort of tweaking stuff. There's the thing of if you're a CMO at a regular company, You say like, oh, my budget was at, like, say 10 million this year. Let's make it 11 for next year because we want to grow more. Then your approach is like, no, we want to decrease the marketing budget, but like excelling with the results.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we are really organic when it comes to that. It's hard to adjust to a budget. Then you actually spend the budget often. And trying to grow with stores and with people makes it more profitable.
Faces expansion. Germany is a big market for you.
Yeah, it's IKEA's largest market. So we're starting off with that.
Because there are two ways of expanding. Like either you start doing pop-up stores and see what it works, and then you sort of start populating that country with more stores, or you go like very headstrong into a market. Seems like you've decided to go and actually win Germany.
Yeah. We started off with one store in Germany, I would say. After, I think it's like 1 or 2 weeks, we decided we are doing fairly more, I would say. So this year is actually going to expand fast in Germany as well. But we started one. But of course, our standard is always omni first. So we do it not just with a store. We have like a return hub. We have the customer service. We have the online starting off straight away. So that's our way of actually launching a country. Yeah. So it's both ways. I don't see that pop-ups are not the way to go with like new continents and so on. But right now we see that we want to go with like a full concept from day one.
Second last question that I have for you. You mentioned that you as the chairman, you've been sort of thinking about how to conceptualize your board meetings around certain topics. That sounded really, really interesting because board meetings can be the most tedious thing to attend and something that, like, if you don't set them up right, it's actually just slowing you down rather than like, making things faster. Yeah. So what's your approach?
I would say this is the most luxurious board to be on and work with. I started working with Stefan on putting the board together, assembling it. We started, it took 6 months to actually do that. A lot of interviews, and we wanted to do things differently. I think the first 6 months we will just get to know each other, meet for real as the value position we have, and we are actually calling our board meetings by different culture words for us or our value base. So the first one was 102%, which is how we work. We don't want to be 120 better because then we would go present better. We would go fast and go ahead, but 102 every day a little bit better. And that makes us year 25 being even more profitable and having a higher turnover every day. So that's how we want to do things. Next meeting is going to be the carbon, the minimum atom of the products, but also I think we call it Johanna as well, which is the first item that we have, and it's a white tank top, so it's the name of the meeting. Cool.
So you name your products like IKEA names their products. Amazing. I love that.
We don't have a Hanna yet, but we have a lot of different names.
You're going to invent the Hanna, I think, for Lager. Cool. So where do you see Lager in, let's say, 5 years?
So 5 years, it's 2030. I would say, I hope we're here. We are in US. I'm not going to say hope. We are in US. Yeah. We are here with our big boxes. We have a smaller store, perhaps, in some of the bigger streets as in New York as well. But still, we have the big boxes around the world. I think we have presence on most of the continents. I think we will have all of them. Maybe not in 5 years, but in 10 at least.
Thank you so much, Hanna, for joining. Big hand for Hanna.
Thanks.
Just wanna pack up my things and go. Just wanna be free, just wanna zone. Just wanna flow, just wanna hang with the gang, but sometimes chill on my own. Just wanna do me, just wanna doze. Just wanna live and see how it goes. When the goals just keep on going, yeah. This life we live is a war. When there's love in the rave, you know. When there's love in the rave, you know. All inside you, all in the soul.
Again, thank you very much for coming today. We're going to continue the podcast. In this next session, we're going to explore 2 topics. One of them is outdoor, the other one is sports. As we know, in sports, there have been some ambitious pushes towards the D2C model, like Nike and so on. Or was it foolish? We don't know, right? And in outdoor, there's been a post-pandemic push. One of the latest and greatest things we've seen in outdoor is the Arc'teryx trend in Asia, which is just taking off. It's crazy. Like, you can't go anywhere in Asia and get something from Arc'teryx unless it's the really cheap stuff. But the main question here is, like, are they really attracting the right customer, or are they attracting the muggles of outdoor? So hopefully these questions and a bunch of other questions, my next guests will help me answer. So I want to welcome on stage Bård, Kvamme and Roscigno. I said your name wrong. Roscigno, right? It's Italian? Roscigno. Wow. So, very nice to have you both here. I 100% realize that sports and outdoors are quite different things. But maybe I can start with you, Pino. You've been 7 years at Stadium.
Yep.
For the non-Swedish or Scandinavian people here, what is Stadium?
Stadium is Nordic, Scandinavian Nordic sports retailer, family owned. We actually had our 50th birthday last year. We have two concepts. The first concept actually that was launched, and today we have a Stadium outlet as well, together with our online sales as well. So 200 stores, 4,000 employees, market leaders in Sweden, top 3 in Finland, and struggling in Norway, competing with lots of brands, I would say, in Norway.
How many years did you say you were celebrating your anniversary?
50th. Yeah.
Okay. Bård has got you beat, okay. I can tell you.
We're getting
Norrøna.
close to 100. So
wow.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
Yeah. not me, but the company.
Did you both compete during the basketball also, or?
I came a little bit late. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So you're not bitter enemies on stage. That's what I'm checking.
I'm so scared for balls. You throw me a ball and I just freeze.
Okay, so do you want to chase it?
Don't give it the ball.
Cool. Pino, I want to start with you. Stadium has grown. I didn't know this, right? But it's grown its business models. Beforehand, we talked a little bit about there's a wide variety of business models. The one is the online, the offline, the stores, obviously. You have different kinds of stores. Then you have the marketplace. Then you have retail media. There's a bunch of stuff going in there. Can you share a little bit about that strategy?
That's why we're here. Can we actually add some complexity to the business?
Yeah.
So that's why we go to NRF every year. No, it's actually it starts with a business strategy. I would say we took a decision a few years ago that we actually want to be the destination for an active life, the leaders in each Nordic market where we are present, and the marketplace and so on actually were just tools to make it possible. But sounds complex, but we have tried to have focus on the customer first. So we don't make it complex for the customer. If it is complex, it could be complex for us, but not. It has to add value to the customer and absolutely to the business strategy. So the marketplace is actually to make sure that we have a broad assortment, so we actually attract as many active people as possible.
But how do you balance that? I mean, you have stuff on your website that is not sold by you, but sold by partners. And me as a consumer, if I go to a store, is that do you set yourself up for disappointment by having a broader assortment there than in the physical stores?
Yeah, it could be, actually. That's one of the difficulties, I would say. If you have 5,000 to 7,000 products in store, and we have about 50,000 online, how do you actually tell the customer all the products you have? So what do? We try to make it available for the store staff as well, so they can use the whole assortment. But this will take time. The consumer isn't there yet. What you see is what you think what you get.
Right. Yeah. Bård, tell us a little bit about the status of the outdoor industry. Where are we at?
That's a good question. My journey with the outdoor industry started 5 years ago. So I started just before Corona, and I think in January, just before Corona. And of course, then a couple of months later, everyone thought that we were going bankrupt and shutting down. But then Corona, in the end, I was actually a perfect timing for outdoor, right? We did fantastic numbers during Corona. It's almost a bit of a shame when Corona ended, because then the numbers started to drop.
Don't say that.
Well, from a private perspective, it was nice to end Corona. Business perspective, a small pandemic is not that bad, right, for the outdoors. So that was fine.
I totally agree. Yeah.
But it is a fascinating industry. We were just talking also before the podcast, and There are so many brands that are doing their own channels, own retail, own e-commerce. You have the multi-brand retailers like in Norway with XXL, for example, which probably could be a podcast on its own, the story about XXL and what they do. So it is an extremely dynamic business. Arc'teryx, as you mentioned, with their Chinese investors expanding rapidly. The store on Broadway, for example, amazing store, amazing brand. So it is a very dynamic industry. Some brands are struggling, others are doing really well. For Norrøna in this landscape, we are sticking to our plan. And that is building the brand organically, being very selective of our distribution, building own stores and own channels, and kind of building the brand step by step. We are not looking for investors to scale it up quickly, but simply build the brand. So we're getting close to 100 years old now. And as Jürgen, my owner, would say, we're also building the company for the next 100 years. And then we need to have a strong brand, a strong platform. We're not going to do the simple solutions. We're not going to do the campaigns with the discounts and giving away our margins. So we stick to the plan. And I think the brands that are, I guess, also in this room, there are a lot of different brands with different strategies. And I think it's also fascinating to discuss how different brands and retailers think. There's not any way that one size fits all. It's all different perspectives, and brands are coming from different places. So I think in general, I think the outdoor industry is in an okay place, but there is a very dynamic and diverse landscape.
A sort of mutual topic for you both. I mean, both outdoor and sports have been there's been a merging with lifestyle. Like people who are, not necessarily into outdoor sports or outdoor kind of activities or sports activities, but they like to wear those clothes. Bård, how do you balance that? Or do you balance that at all as an outdoor brand? Who do you cater to?
Yeah, company strategic-wise, we are not a fashion brand. That is very clear. So our mission is to make the world's greatest outdoor products for the most extreme users. This is what we do at Norrøna. But then sometimes our products become fashion products, which is not really intentional, but sometimes they become fashion products. And we also see an interesting growth within our kind of more like city collections, typically the stuff that I would wear going to meetings, like more like normal wear. So we see a pretty good growth. I think for us, if we were to be a fashion brand, I'm a little bit afraid of kind of becoming like, that up and down brand that is growing like this and then jumping down again. And there are so many examples in fashion and sports of brands that have been growing rapidly and then totally plummeting, disappearing for 5 years and then kind of re-emerging. I was just talking to Jack earlier, thinking about, you can see the Champion stores again. I remember when I was a kid, I was always wearing Champion, and that brand, where did they go for 20 years? I have no idea. It just disappeared, and suddenly in China, it's popping up all over the place. Stores in New York, so Champion is back, right? Yeah. But I think for us, we need the stability of being true to our brand, true to our customers, and rather build step by step. And so we will stay away from fashion, but sometimes we end up being fashion. Not intentionally, but...
and it can boost your short-term sales, right? Absolutely. But if you build your strategy, it's very, very risky. And in sports, I'm thinking maybe the same thing, but stadium, I would say, you must sort of cater also to the lifestyle consumer, right? The people coming in to buy.
Fashion is a strong word.
Oh yeah, sure.
Super strong. We try to stay close to sports because we can deliver on sports, but the fashion we're so depending on the brands. What's their strategy actually? Why do they want to sell their products as well? So we can't actually, of course, we can choose. We can make sure that we are the preferred partner to work with when it comes to the major brands. But fashion is hard to live up to. And you have actually seen the sneaker trend for so many years now. They're trying to sell the sneakers in special stores, lifestyle products, and so on. And we haven't been able to sell the sneakers we actually wanted to sell. So I think it is moving, perhaps in the Nordics, moving back to that we will be able to sell more fashion brands, fashion products, I would say. But it's difficult to live up to the word, I would say the word fashion, but lifestyle, absolutely. And in the south of Europe, actually, you can see how lifestyle and some of the brands are benefiting super much around the trends now around lifestyle.
But do you sort of risk in becoming in that awkward middle of not catering to anyone if you start catering to lifestyle consumers rather than the sports users.
Absolutely. That's why we try to stay true to sports. And sports have sort of fashion as well and trends as well. Like soccer is super trendy and really quite a lot of fashion as well. And running too. You would be surprised if you knew how much people actually are willing to spend for a pair of running shoes. So that's why we try to be fashion.
On is super interesting. Like, a brand that actually has proven that they are worthy of staying after their first kind of initial journey and so on. I think they're really interesting to see those brands as well.
Also just add from our perspective that I totally agree with you. Fashion is a strong word. I think, what we look for is lifestyle. The biggest growing activity and collection we have at the moment is our Senja collection, which is the trail running collection. And of course, the analysis was simply showing that a lot of the people who are buying the ski gear from Norrøna, they also run. Right. This is a very simple analysis, but this is also kind of catering to the lifestyle of the active customer. And of course, they're not only skiing, but they're also doing other activities like biking and running. And of course, we want to be a part in, the premium segment of all these activities. Yeah. But fashion, no. Lifestyle, yes.
But running is interesting. It's a good example. It's becoming the new golf. Like people are actually meeting up during their lunch just to kind of talk business and do a quick run. So that's kind of a different movement, I would say. But talk about running and sneakers and so on, like the D2C trend of Nike. In Swedish we have something called bra anus. I think that's the sort of we don't know if is it good or bad, but like from your point of view, first they wanted to work with Stadium, then all of a sudden they said no to retailers or to resellers. Now they're kind of going back on that.
It was actually, to be fair, it wasn't just Nike, but Nike actually have to. Many laugh at Nike for the moment, but it was the whole industry, I would say, that wanted actually to go direct to the consumer. And we saw that coming, but we were actually, I would say, we were privileged in the Nordics. We were preferred for Nike. So we actually got the possibility. They closed down the others' doors. So we get really nice positioning in the Nordics for especially Nike when it came to Stadium. That was okay for us. That was good. But we actually had one situation because, like I told you, we weren't allowed to sell sneakers in the coolest shoes in Stadium for a few years. What we did we do then? We actually opened a sneaker concept called Sneaker Store, Sneakers Point, just to be able to serve that customer. But what happened when Nike actually closed so many doors, extremely many doors, 90% of the doors were actually closed. So we couldn't keep the cooler products in the Sneakers Point. So we had to close down that concept, standing there with Stadium. And
they rapidly went down also the number of drops they do and so on, right? Because the secondhand market is non-existent.
But why did they choose us? That's why it's so important for us to stay true to our long-term strategy as well and our brand. They actually chose us on Stadium on the Nordic market because we add value to their brands. If we want to sell these kind of products, fashion, call them what you like, but if you want to sell the products actually they would like to sell, we need to be something different from the competitors. If we can add value to their brands in our marketplace, then they will come to us.
And Bård, like for outdoor, sustainability has been a big thing. I mean, Houdini is being hailed as a hero brand in that area, and Patagonia they had a rise and maybe a fall also from that position. Like, how do you think about those things in your building your brand and sort of?
Of course, being in the outdoor industry, focus on sustainability is totally logical, right? Because without nature, there is no outdoor. So focusing on also without snow, there is no Norrøna, right? Without snow, there is no Norrøna. So then we're gone. So the sustainability focus is very natural, I would say. Thinking about, general the market, and I'm not going to mention any names, but of course some brands are currently focusing on a lot on kind of repairs and rebirth stuff. Okay, maybe I mentioned a name there. And to me, some of these activities seems to be more like marketing-driven activities. Is it really like the true stuff, or is it more like something that you're showing your customers? I think for Norrøna, which is a really cool story, is that Norrøna started with repairs back in 1929. So this is not like a marketing-driven activity. And last year we did roughly 20,000 repairs. So I think this is a totally natural part of the industry, and also a total natural part of Norrøna, that you are thinking about sustainability. You're buying product that should last, and of course a good Gore-Tex jacket should last at least for 10-15 years. You don't have to buy a new one every year, even though the retailer and us, of course, would like to sell that jacket 100 times. So I think it's a totally natural part, but I think also customers should be a little bit skeptical about brands kind of using sustainability as pure marketing. I think customers needs to be a little bit smarter and kind of figure out what's behind it. And I think with Patagonia, I think they have done a fantastic job of telling the story. It was like the biggest PR press thing with those pictures of giving the company back to nature and to the people. But then 10 minutes later, I get like my weekly outlet mail from Patagonia with 70% discounts on the whole store. Right, so it's a bit of a total enormous respect to Patagonia. They are a bit like the Apple within our industry, but. I think customers should also reflect of kind of a bigger picture around sustainability and brands and retailers.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, every 10 years you need to buy a new jacket. That would be like a venture capital killer KPI to report. Like, so what our retention is every 10 years.
I also just reflect on that. I used to work for a Norwegian company called Stokke, and probably most of you guys are aware about the trip trap chair, like the wooden chair. And we're doing retail in Shanghai and Beijing and Tokyo. And the customers are coming in saying, I love your chair. We bought our first chair in 1974 and we still have it. I was thinking this retail concept is fucked, right? This is like this. How the hell are we going to get, these products are too good. Yeah. Jesus, 1974. And, it still looks perfect. Yeah. So sustainability is good, but sometimes, of course, with kind of a commercial private equity perspective, we also like to sell products. And for us, this is more about the kind of expanding our global footprint than just selling, people 10 Gore-Tex jackets, because I don't think anyone needs 10 Gore-Tex jackets. So.
And speaking of that, like, how do you engage with your clients or customers? Because you said you're a full price brand. You have, some certain products that are fairly expensive, and it takes a lot of consideration from the consumer maybe to choose that. And there's a lot of like technical aspects to selling that kind of jacket. If you don't work with discounts, you don't use that as activations, how do you do that? How do you activate consumers without rebates?
Yeah, of course, it's not expensive. It's value for money, right? It's not expensive. Sorry, just to clarify.
Per month, if you for 10 years. Yeah.
One of the key things for us is, of course, and this is of course like everyone is saying, build communities. Everyone is saying they're building communities, but for us, last year we did roughly 200 retail in-store events in our stores. And I'm happy to say that none of the events, absolutely none of them, were like sales driven. There were no discounts, no campaign, no nothing. But we still sold a lot of products because people come and they buy products, right? But no discounts. And for us, this is simply about, getting close to the community, getting close to the customers. Of course, then telling the story, telling the brand's story, talking about the kind of company pillars, talking about Norrøna and the heritage and the sustainability and the design, and then getting them closer to the brand and being a part of the community. And we strongly believe that, especially with physical retail, we have a huge online store now, which is growing a lot. But for us, having physical retail is the only proper way we know of building a brand. Because the people, like we spoke about, the people in retail are so important. And hopefully, if you go to Norrøna store in Soho, you will feel like the people are actually dedicated. Yeah. They love the brand. They would like to show you the store, tell you the stories. If you go to Nike in Soho, sad to say, but I'm a big fan of Nike. There's like 30 people working on the floor. No one is smiling. No one is saying hello. There could be 2 people. It doesn't really matter. There's no service. You don't have to be 30. There could be 2 standing in the corner drinking a Coke and relaxing.
I agree. Like, what they failed is the execution, because the concept is right. You have to experience the brand for 3 floors until you get to purchase the product. Like, they focus on innovation, on the athletes and all that stuff that they're good at. But when you get up there, it takes you half an hour to get help, and they don't have stuff in stock. And it's a very interesting. I'm thinking that they're not getting the full sort of out of their cost of those square feet.
There's a paradox there, because at an event earlier this week, I heard Reese talking about clienteling, especially in the US market, how important it is for the US customers to be recognized. Yep. They love being recognized. And then Nike and Seoul, they're not recognizing anyone. They're kind of hardly breathing, the people who was working there. And to me, that's just like fascinating. Yeah. You know, everyone's saying clienteling, you know, personalization, customization, and then they're just standing there. And I think brands, and also know with Stadium, you know, it is about the people and the culture, right? And if you have a strong culture, you have great people, then, you know, you can move whatever you want. But without the culture, without the people, you know, loving what they do, it's very difficult.
Pino, how important is, you know, or I'm going to rephrase, how do you work with kind of maintaining that high level of service in stores? Because that's still your main channel.
It's super important. I would say that's our absolutely most important asset, the stores, the culture we actually have in the company and the stores. Well, the value they actually add in each customer meeting is what we live on. So that's super important. So it is managed, but it's very much about who we recruit and what the culture is actually in the company. Yep. And that people can see, the customer can see that they actually love what they do, and that we have the knowledge. We actually work with. We have specialist concepts too, together with the complex model with the marketplace and outlet and stadium concept. We have run stores, specialist concept stores, and we have ski stores. So we have to make sure that we actually have the knowledge that client actually need to buy the products. So absolutely the meeting to take care of the customer, but also adding on the value of knowledge.
Gentlemen, we're run out of time. Very, very interesting to have you both here, and a big hand for both of you. So, the toy industry has had its fair share of ups and downs. My mind goes directly to 2018 when Toys R Us went belly up, and I think the conclusion back then, and still maybe now, we'll find out in a bit, was that, you know, they taught the consumer to buy stuff off Amazon rather than buying things in their stores, and they maybe forgot to focus on that store experience a little bit. And I mean, some other challenges as well. There have been a decline in birth rates in many markets. Like, how do you cater to that consumer and that environment? At the same time, Lego is building a freaking empire around their brand and their products, which is super interesting. And if you think about it, they're doing that while they're building an empire that is around media, like a multi-billion-dollar empire. So there are really interesting aspects to the toy market. And for our next guest here, I wanted to sort of ask him, how do you actually succeed in this environment? Because it is a challenging environment. And yeah, so big hand for Bård van Duffel. Well, you were at Lego. Let's start there. So we have that recording. Yeah. And when did you start at Lego?
I started in Lego actually when they were really in trouble in 2005. Mm-hmm. They were just about to, making a big loss and trying to turn around the Lego brand and everything around that. And I did that until 2018, where I was fortunate to go to different stages, but I was in the last 8 years responsible for Lego Retail EMEA, so D2C, their own stores, e-com. And then I went to Asia to set it up as well for the Asian market, where direct-to-consumer was a strategic pillar in order to grow Lego as well.
Yeah, and now you're not at Lego, but you are running a company called Toychamp, right?
Toychamp, Dreamland, Intertoys. That's actually a holding now, which is the major player in physical retail in the Benelux. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So I'm doing the post-merger integration, the carve-outs of the different companies in order to make one big company. Yeah.
So is that a private equity game you're running?
No,
in terms
it's
of
a family business, completely funded also with family money, like Lager 157, I think. Yeah, a little bit the same.
And you're acquiring companies that are sort of struggling in the physical space, but you see there's a huge potential, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so CEO really believes in physical brick-and-mortar toy stores where you can create an experience, where you can stimulate the people, have them inspired by different things. And the good thing in the toy industry is that you partly buy for yourself toys, but you buy for kids, you buy for as a gift giver, and so on. And so you need sometimes some help. I think it's important. Toys are struggling. Brick and mortar stores are struggling because of the online, the Amazon, the bol.coms, and others. But buying that with a kid online, scrolling image by image, that's not so easy. And then you take your kid to a store, and then you can get out of the store and say, hey, we'll get it online, and you get it in 2 days. Then you might not be a good parent, right, in the eyes of the kids at that moment, right? So there's some potential in the brick and mortar sector.
Bad conscience as you have as a parent. So one thing I learned from like the private equity space is that if something is 51% shit, you don't buy it. If it's 49% shit, you buy it, right? You need to see that there's a chance of there's some KPIs that you can improve and make it sort of a working business. Is that what KPIs are you looking for when you acquire these retailers?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, right? If you look at KPIs, first of all, yeah, look, can you get to the bottom line? It's the costs in retail are super important. How can you keep your costs under control? I think, and one third of the cost is rent. 1/3 of the cost is personnel, and then you need to do the buying in a very good way. So in order to realize economies of scale, you need to keep your cost base on a good level, and then try to scale, use that scale for your purchasing and then for your headquarters as well, and try to automate as much as possible. But the most important KPIs for me in retail, and that's what we did at Lego as well a lot, is actually customer experience. And so for the stores I ran in EMEA and in Asia, the only KPIs for the stores we really had was Net Promoter Score and mystery shop. And at a certain point of time, there were experiments with conversion rate and stuff like that, where we said, no, get it out. And as soon as you got it out and really were focusing on experience, then conversion rates went up and sales went up. So a good mix between the hard KPIs and the softer KPIs. I think it's super important to be able to succeed in toy retail, and maybe in retail in general.
Very difficult also to not have biased into the soft KPIs, I think, in retail, when you talk about the experiences and stuff. But so I mentioned earlier, and I got the fact from you, like the birth rates are down in many markets, which, is at least a factor for you in terms of if you want to sell toys to kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how do you manage to work around that?
Yeah, one important thing is, usually in order to keep stable, you need to win 16.6% every year again, because you're losing that. The customer lifetime cycles is, from 3 till 14, 15 years old. Right. So you lose 16% of your customers.
There's a clear drop-off there.
Yeah, wow. More or less. Yeah. If you look at that, so recruitment is very important. Getting new people on board.
That's interesting. Like the tobacco companies have the same problem, but their customers die.
They die.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so this is where you look at how can we capture them as early as possible in their life, and then keep them loyal customers. But with the declining birth rate, you see different dynamics. And Jack Stratten was saying the culture is changing as well, and you need to be able to play on that. One thing that has happened during the pandemic is that adults started playing a lot more. So you have these board games that are actually booming right now. Lego, before the pandemic, I cannot reveal the real numbers, but I know the adult part of their business was, let's say, around 20%. Now it's more than double. So in that perspective, you need to see there's a huge boom that adults started playing again, and we now have something that's called a kiddled category. Also gamers, they get really in this universe of where they're gaming, and they start buying more and more merchandise around that, and toys and everything around that. So this kiddled category is booming, and this is where we as toy retailers need to play on. So how the gift occasions, the adults coming in your store, playing together with kids. And on the other hand side, also the kids during the pandemic have been playing so much on their computers. They want to get out. Yeah. And that's also what you see. The e-commerce boom in certain categories has not continued after the pandemic because they want to get out again and they want to be there. And then you need to be relevant for them.
That's interesting because during this pandemic, my company, we have a small office in Shanghai, and Shanghai obviously was really struck by the lockdowns. So we had an unfortunately employee that she was in her apartment for 102 days. And we figured out that, Legos, like Lego kits, sending her those were the best way of keeping her sane. So we started out with a super simple one. And then I think she got the Hogwarts super castle at the end. That was like $400, because she was so good at it. She was took her 15 minutes to do like an advanced one. But I don't think we were alone. I think, people were, trying to find ways of staying sane during lockdown or uncertainty and so on. But when we we want to sell toys to adults, how do we make sure that there's a balance? Like that, let's say Lego, we still want to attract kids, right? So where is there a fine line?
It's a very good question because now I'm on the other side, I'm the customer of Lego now. Yeah. I'm saying, guys, you're ignoring the kids. You're losing your kids because you're focusing so much on the adults at this point of time. So there's a balance to strike on how can you keep recruiting the kids. And I think there's some lines coming out this year where it's clear that parents and kids can play together on different models that are the kids' models and then the parents' models, and they try to get the kids more and recruiting them back in a broader way. But physical retail there again plays a very important role if you look at the Lego stores. But also as us, as partners of Lego, they want to get the kids exposed to the products. Make them play, hands-on play. It's super important. And where can you do that? Not online, but you go then in store where there's a lot of things happening, events happening, making them build competitions and stuff like that. I think that's super important, not only for Lego, but it's also making kids play, having them experience the products, seeing other things than they see on TV as well, really catering to their interests and stimulating them. It's super important.
Do you have any toy brand or reseller that you like to visit when you're in New York that kind of does a really good job? You can't say Lego.
Yeah, FAO Schwarz actually is always nice to go back to, right? They have been bankrupt for a while. Now they're popping up again, and they really are the top here, I think, in experience apart from Lego. Stores just like Hamleys does a great job, I think, across the world as well, in trying to bring these experience in the stores. But they are on top locations, and you can only do that in a couple of stores and still be profitable.
True, and only a couple of markets or cities, right?
Yeah. Cool. That's where you normally have your top 10 city approach in the world, right? Where you can go, just like the M&M stores, for example, which is also create great experiences around the M&M's brand, but you can have 7, 8 in the world, and that's what's worthwhile doing.
It's going to be a while until we see an M&M store in Skövde. The Swedish people will probably know that reference. Okay, so my final question to you, and thank you so much for coming today, but it's who do you see the big winner is in 2025 in the toy industry?
Well, I think in the toy industry, I think Lego will continue to build their empire and grow. They're investing a hell of a lot. And then there's some niche players like MGA who are really going into this kiddled category as well. They have these mini verses, and they are really playing with social media upon the collectability. Mm-hmm. And then in the gaming industry, everything around Fortnite that's coming on. Not only the digital game, but everything, the merchandise, the toys around that. I think these will be the big winners.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. Big hand for Bård. My next guest here has been in the digital space for a long time. Actually, a good flex is that he started working alongside with Daniel Ek, the Spotify founder. Now he shifted then to retail and to e-com, and now he's at Ellos. And Ellos is a fairly big player in the Nordics. Outside of Nordics, not huge, right? But they're a lifestyle multi-brand store, and you understand when I say that those, if you look at like the Farfetch and so on, they have been struggling quite a lot. So we want to hear the secrets of why and how you're doing the future-proofing of Ellos. Welcome up stage, Cédric. It took me 5 sessions, and I learned to put that mic on before you sit down. I'm a slow learner.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How often do you go to New York?
It's my first time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. West Coast, Google.
Right. But what's your first impression?
Great. I love the city. I love the diversities, all the nationalities, and just proving us that many cultures and people can live together and really find out in a jungle of how to make it. So I think it's a good example. We fight in Europe like on many territories when it comes to those points, but I think New York is a very good example. Yeah, it could work.
I totally agree. Your background, I mentioned a little bit about the flex of Daniel Ek and so on, but apart from that, sort of after Raya, was it right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Raya, that's the dating platform. I'm not on it, by the way. No, so tell us a little bit about like the journey from Yaya to Ellos.
Yeah, so I have both nationality, French and Swedish. So when I arrived in Sweden, I started in digital then. So I started at Yaya Communication, where Daniel Ek was the CTO. And then I started the national expansion of Yaya. So, and then, but we had some issues with a strong Google update. So the whole spider, fall apart. And then we have to find a solution. And one of them was like to start my own agency. And that's basically my specialty since the last 20 years. Full channels, everything from organic to paid search. And I focus even more when it comes to data, basically, because it's really in the e-commerce. This is what I've been working a lot through agency, and when I did my exit and sold to another agency, it's all about data. So, and when I cover a part of this journey also as a media auditor. So I was traveling the world, auditing the big 500 from the big 6 work. So I worked with Kia, Hyundai, or the Hollywood studio a lot. And in Europe, it's like Goodyear, Zurich, etc. So it's all about data. And then I decided to go back because I think like the auditing part is more like looking back at figures, and which was great, and I learned a lot from it. But it talked to me that it was much better to go back to the marketing side and the e-commerce. So instead of working on the agency side, I started to work on the client side.
You share that one of the biggest things you've been doing at Ellos is like investing in a new tech stack for marketing, a lot of around data and so on. And thanks to that, you've been able to run this sort of hundreds of influencers ongoing program. Like, can you explain like the before and after? Like, yeah. Before that, where were you as a company in terms of marketing, and now where do you see yourself?
So I've been 5 years at Ellos, and we started to build redesign the architecture of the marketing stack, and to place a true purpose for every single platform and every data collected, so that we can have the best use on it and the best analysis on it. So the shift was clearly to go toward like a data-driven optimization. and everything is again about data and platform data collections and how to use it. And it's a tricky part. But us, Ellos, we are 100% digital. We don't have any physical store, and that's not our ambition. We actually closed the last 3-1. And so if we do any expansion, it will be online expansion. So we purely e-com company.
But then again, like if you look at online expansion, so social has been a way of building a lot of new brands, but also maybe taking the weight off of television that was used to be like the growth driver within lifestyle brands, especially retail and so on. And that is fallen upon social. And companies that were good at social, they were also allowed to sort of punch over their weight class. You can see Lululemon is a good example, right? They're doing really well, although they were an up-and-comer. But now, social is much more difficult. It's like the consumers are more educated, the platforms are more expensive, the algorithms are screwed up, if you ask me, on like Meta and those platforms. Like, I'm kind of impressed that what you're doing right now. But can you explain what's difficult and what's hard about that?
Well, the answer is it need to be broken into two parts. So again, what we did is to redesign the architecture of the stack. As I said, change of platform, connected the input coming from the platform, and send it back to a central point. Of course, it has been an evolution, but the evolution is also true on the data side. And what happened is basically, if true preference e-commerce focusing on data in order to leave more power to the algorithm and the AI that now is connected with the algorithm, it works actually perfectly well. So it is true that it's a challenge for social and how to control this. And the more we want to control the brand, and the less we block some parameters of unleashing the performance on the other side when leave to data and AI. And what we see is like, the more you work on the walled garden from Google side or on Facebook side, and you unleash that power to leave trust more into the algorithm, it works perfectly well. However, the other part, the control part, is also important, of course, to secure the brand and the awareness and the consideration part, right? So we turn every single platform and stones. And when it comes to social and influencers, then we started to look differently or think differently. We had like about 15 influencers. That was back in 2023. And then we said, okay, if we want now to reach X hundred of millions with influencers, with the change after the pandemic, like how do we make it happen? And we can't keep it on doing nothing, basically. So, and we said, okay, how much will it cost? So how can we do that journey? And if we want to keep also scalability, and the answer was like, no, we need to continue with the same pattern of paying influencers per post. And we said, okay, we're going to challenge that. And we had the opportunity to meet, so we were actually working with already impact.com. And Impact, we were using a lot of the affiliate, which is also another black box that we completely clean. And when it comes to influencers, we said, well, how can we still have direct contact with ambassadors, a bit more closer relationship with influencers that have like a significant size, and then how to unleash the powers of like this bottom of the pyramid with macros and micros. And this is where the solution becomes like very interesting and very powerful, because then suddenly you have influencers that works at performance level. And it's a combination of hybrid and commission, of course.
So what's your strategy there? So you have your own brands, and then you have your like external brands, where you activate consumers through like the influencer programs. Is that with your own products, because you have a higher margin? If you look at like that, why Daniel Wellington was so successful was that they had this extreme high margin and a perfect price point to sell stuff, but also give stuff away for free. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, like it's a feed driven, but for us, what is important is to really sell both internal brands and external brands. External brands, could be attractive in terms of like acquisition point, but it's also interesting in terms of like activation. That it could end up completely with our brand. So it's something that works. And when it comes to steerings, for example, was it connected to influencers as well, this question? Of like internal, external?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. So in the platform, we have the possibility to completely tailor-made and to manage all those different contracts. It's a one-to-one contract directly with Ellos, and which is very much appreciated from the influencers. And therefore, we can decide the level of commissions and categories we want to push, department we want to, follow, etc. So it's something that is very powerful. And when it comes to like the management of the full portfolio, so now we have 500 influencers. It took about 18 months, so the growth was impressive. It's going super fast, and we're super happy about this development. But if we look in terms of like how we can, observe for the coming years, we see there's still a strong potential growth. So that answers the question, with the social part also declining at some point, but also gaining on the other one with the algorithm.
So and that leads me to sort of the final question, which is, you're seeing a sort of a positive trajectory from here. Where do you see Ellos in 5 years?
We have a series of obligation to follow with the fashions and EU by 2030. So I think like we're connected a little bit with the talk we had at Amazon office yesterday. It's all from logistic to customer services. Every data will be connected basically. So we have a better response on how to make that profitability level in a sustainable way.
And how will that sort of impact business, do you think?
Well, it does impact a lot because it's, of course, it's a change in terms of the positioning and the branding, and it's something that we are going to tackle a lot in 2025. And of course, like, when it comes to trends, you need to be able to capture all those different points at data set, basically.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining today. Big hand. We are at the end of the line. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. The people who are listening in afterwards, thank you for listening. And so be sure to share this when you're back in Sweden and you see that it's been published so that we get as much reach as possible. It's been a blast to create a new podcast from basically out of nowhere, an idea that me and Andreas had back a few months ago. So thanks to Ingrid. Thanks to all the partners. Thank you for joining. And I want to say one last thing, is that when we're out there, don't forget to be kind to people working in retail. Thank you.
It was a tough basketball game this morning, so my brain is still have a concussion. But thanks so much, Jacob. Amazing job, and thanks to all the people on stage as well. So also thanks to Section 3 that has helped us with all the techniques and stuff, and the DJ as well. Good job. So with that said, also I want to give Jacob a gift here. A basketball. So not sure you're going to take it home, but... Cool. So thanks so much again for coming. This has been amazing. I learned a lot today, so thanks so much. Hope you did as well. And see you 1:30 down, ready to see some real basketball. Right? So thank you. Bye.